Welcome to Hello English Teacher. Today let's look at the line by line explanation of the chapter The Sermon at Benares from Class 10 English. If you're watching my video for the first time, please subscribe. You can listen to the explanations of chapters from classes 10, 11 and 12 English. And don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload a video. Let's move on to the video now. The source of this chapter is Betty Renshaw. She was born in Mississippi on September 3. After graduating from Shannon High School, she went on to obtain her Bachelor of Arts degree from Mississippi College and later a Master of Arts from Mississippi University for Women. So let's move on to the lesson. So before that, here is a small activity. Use a dictionary or ask for your teacher's help as you discuss the following questions in groups. So the name of the lesson is Sermon at Benares. So what is the meaning of sermon? Sermon is nothing but a talk, a religious talk given by a hermit or a sage. Okay, it is different from lecture or a talk. It is different from lecture means lecture can be given on any topic. It is given in schools, it is given by politicians, it is given by people. Anybody can give a lecture, but sermon is usually used during religious purposes. Okay, and they talk about morals and principles, etc. So can this word be used in a negative or as a joke? Suppose as my mother's sermon about getting my work done on time. Yeah, sometimes people use it as a joke, when somebody is trying to preach something to you or give you some advice and they keep giving you long talks. Some of them might say, yes, she was giving me a sermon on this or on that, etc. So sometimes it is used in that way to make fun of certain facts. So here's one more activity. Find out the meanings of the words and phrases given below. First one, afflicted with. Afflicted with is to suffer from something, be affected with something. Next one is be composed. Be composed means to have your feelings under control. Desolation is feeling very lonely and separate. Okay. Lamentation is to cry or weep. Procure is to get. Be subject to is also to be affected by something. So next is, have you heard of the Sermon of the Mount? Who delivered it? Who do you think delivered a sermon at Benares? So Sermon of the Mount was delivered by Jesus Christ and he delivered it to his disciples talking about various morals and things like that. And Sermon at Benares was delivered by Gautama Buddha. Now we are going to see what is the sermon at Benares that he had delivered. So let's move on to the lesson. Gautama Buddha began life as a prince named Siddhartha Gautama in northern India. So we are all familiar with Gautama Buddha. He was a prince and then later he became a monk and he was the founder of the Buddhism religion and he was believed to live during the 563 BC to 483 BC. At 12, he was sent away for schooling in the Hindu sacred scriptures and 4 years later he returned home to marry a princess. So at 12, he was sent away for schooling and what did he learn? He learned all the Hindu sacred scriptures. Scriptures are the holy books. And after his studies, so how many years did he take to complete his studies? 4 years. So he returned home. So when he was 16, he returned home and then he married a princess. They had a son and lived for 10 years as befitted royalty. So as he was a prince, he lived a happy life with his wife and he had a son as well. Okay, so they lived very happily and very royally. They led a royal life. What is the meaning of royal life? Enjoying all kingly pleasures and riches and all that and having so much of importance. People used to treat him as a prince. He was indeed a prince and so with his princess and son he led a very kingly life without not knowing any kind of sufferings. He was always happy. He got everything whatever he wanted. At about the age of 25, the prince, heretofore shielded from the sufferings of the world, while out hunting, chanced upon a sick man, then an aged man, then a funeral procession, and finally a monk begging for alms. So what happened at the age of 25? He heretofore means until then. Until then he was shielded from all the sufferings of the world. That means till the age of 25 he did not know the meaning of suffering. We saw that he was leading a very happy life, a very princely life. He got all the happiness around him. So till the age of 25 he did not know the meaning of the word suffering, or he never saw anybody suffering, neither experienced it himself. Okay. So what happened at the age of 25? Once he went out for hunting, and while going for hunting, and from there he saw different kinds of people. What are the kinds of people he saw? He saw a sick man, then he saw an aged man, an old man. Then he also saw a funeral procession. Somebody was dead and they were taking the body for cremation. So that is the funeral procession. And then he also saw a monk begging for alms. Monk is a sage or a hermit. So he was begging for alms, means asking money for people so that he can have some food or something. So all these kinds of suffering he saw for the first time when he was 25 years old, as he was going for hunting. These sights so moved him that he at once went out into the world to seek enlightenment concerning the sorrows he had witnessed. So what happened? The moment he saw all these kinds of sufferings, because until then he had not known what is suffering, and when he saw these kinds of suffering, he wanted to find out the reason. So he went out into the world. He left all his royalty and went away from there in order to find out what is the meaning of this sorrow and this death and all that. So he wanted to seek enlightenment. What is enlightenment? To understand the meaning, to get the knowledge about all these concerns. He wandered for 7 years and finally sat down under a peepal tree. So he left the worldly pleasures and then he started wandering about. So he went here and there in search of understanding. He wanted to understand what are the different causes, why people are suffering, why people are dying. So he wandered here and there, and finally he sat down under a peepal tree where he vowed to stay until enlightenment came. That means he vowed, that means he swore that he will not get up from there until he found out the meaning of all the sorrows, or the understanding. He got the understanding as to why these are occurring. So he sat down under this peepal tree. So enlightened after 7 days, he renamed the tree Bodhi tree, or tree of wisdom, and began to teach and to share his new understandings. So he sat down under this tree for 7 days. So after 7 days, the understanding came to be him. That means he became enlightened, and then from there on he started to teach people, and he began to share whatever he understood to all the people. So at that point he became to be known as the Buddha, or the awakened, or the enlightened. So the name Buddha means the one who is awakened or enlightened. So from that moment he got the understanding. He sat under the tree. I have shown you the picture there. That is the tree, the Bodh Gaya, which is situated in Bihar. Okay. So he sat under the tree and he started teaching people about his understandings. The Buddha preached his first sermon at the city of Benares. So he gave his first sermon from the city of Benares. Where is Benares? Benares is the old name, and now it is known as Varanasi, okay, which is situated on the banks of the river Ganga. So the most holy dipping place on the river Ganges. That sermon has been preserved and is given here. So we are going to look at that sermon, what he had given at Benares. It reflects the Buddha's wisdom about one inscrutable kind of suffering. So in this sermon means, I told you, it is preaching and teaching about some values, moral principles. So in this we are going to understand the inscrutable, one of the inscrutable kinds of suffering. Inscrutable means something that is very difficult to understand. So there are different kinds of suffering in the world, and this speech or this preaching or this sermon is about one such kind of suffering. Kisa Gautami had only one son and he died. So it is about the story of one of the villagers there. A lady called Kisa Gautami lived at that time, and she had only one son. And what happened to that one son? He died. Somehow he died. In her grief, she carried the dead child to all her neighbors, asking them for medicine. And people said, "She has lost her senses. The boy is dead." So, what happened to Kisa Gautami? She had one son, and the boy died. And she was so grief stricken. She was so sad that she carried the dead child to all the neighbors' house, and she started asking all of them for some kind of medicine to revive the son. Can you revive a dead person? No, you cannot. So, this fact the lady did not understand, and she kept on going to all the neighbors' houses and asking for some medicine to revive her dead son. And what did all the neighbors say? They said that she had lost her senses. That means she is mad. How can you bring back a dead boy? The boy is already dead. This is what they all said. At length, Kisa Gautami met a man who replied to her request. "I cannot give thee medicine for thy child, but I know a physician who can." So, what happened? As she was asking many people, one man replied to her request. And what did he say? "I am not able to give any medicine for such a child, but I know a physician, a doctor. Okay, so I know a person who will be able to help you." And the girl said, "Pray tell me, sir, who is it?" And the girl wanted to know who is that person who could help her in this grief. And the man replied, "Go to Sakya Muni, the Buddha." So the man said, "See, I cannot help you, but if you go to this person, he will help you." And who is that? Go to Sakya Muni, the Buddha. So the Buddha is also called as Sakya Muni. So he said, "You go and meet him." Kisa Gautami repaired to the Buddha and cried, "Lord and Master, give me the medicine that will cure my boy." So what she did, she went straight to Buddha and requested him to listen to her request. And then what did she say? "Sir, can you please give me a medicine that will cure my son?" The Buddha answered, "I want a handful of mustard seed." And when the girl in her joy promised to procure it, the Buddha added. So what did the Buddha reply? He said, "Okay, if I should help you, you must do something." And what is it that she has to do? She has to bring him a handful of mustard seeds. And she was very happy, and she promised to procure it, means to bring it. So she was supposed to bring a handful of mustard seeds. But then as she was about to go, the Buddha added, he said something else. "The mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one has lost a child, husband, a parent, or a friend." So he also added this phrase along with that. What did he say? "You must bring the mustard seed from a house where no one has died till now." Okay, even it should not be a friend or a child or a parent or a husband or a wife. So bring a handful of mustard seeds from a house which did not experience death till now. So this is the condition that Buddha gave to Kisa Gautami. Poor Kisa Gautami now went from house to house, and the people pitied her and said, "Here is mustard seed, take it." But when she asked, "Did a son or a daughter or a father or a mother die in your family?" they answered, "Alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief." So what happened? This lady went from one house to another asking for a handful of mustard. Everybody was ready to give the mustard seeds. But then when she asked the second question, what is the second question? Did anybody die in this family? And then everybody answered, "Don't remind us about our greatest sorrow. We have lost somebody or the other." So from every house where she went and asked for the seeds, there was no house where nobody had never died. Every house had lost one person or other. So she could not find a house where there was no death at all. And there was no house but someone beloved one had died in it. Okay, so she could not find such a house where nobody had ever died. Kisa Gautami became weary and hopeless. Weary means very tired and hopeless. She did not have any hope of finding a house with the condition that Buddha had asked her, and sat down at the wayside watching the lights of the city as they flickered up and were extinguished again. So she sat on the way and she was just watching the city lights, okay, and they were flickering up and were extinguished again. So flickering up itself says it's not the gas light that we have now, it must have been flames, okay. So it must have been fire, lights lit by fire. So because of the wind they were flickering and they were extinguishing, means they were put off, the lights were put off and all that because of the wind. At last the darkness of the night reigned everywhere. So once all the lights went off, what happened? There was total darkness, and she considered the fate of men, that their lives flicker up and are extinguished again. So by looking at these flickering lights that were flickering and then being extinguished, she understood that the lives of men, the life of a man is also similar to this. That means it keeps flickering and finally it gets extinguished. That means the man lives for some time and then finally he loses his life. And she thought to herself, how selfish I am in my grief. Death is common to all. Yet in this valley of desolation there is a path that leads to immortality, who has surrendered all selfishness. So she understood, by looking at those lights, she understood that death is inevitable. You cannot control death, or you cannot do away with death. Everybody who is born must die one day. And she thought, how selfish I am in my grief. That means how I became selfish in my grief. That means when I am sad, I thought about only myself. I did not think about the universal truth. So death is common to all, and yet in this valley of desolation there is a path that leads him to immortality, who has surrendered all selfishness. So she understood that death is common, nobody can escape death, and you can have a way, you can become immortal by surrendering all your selfishness. So if you are selfless, you can become immortal. So she understood that her quality of selfishness should also be done away with. The Buddha said, the life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain. So what did the Buddha tell her? The life of mortal. What is the meaning of mortal? Somebody who has life and birth and death. Okay. So the life of mortals. So we are all mortals. So the life of mortals is combined with trouble, brief and grief, not brief, sorry, grief, and it's combined with pain also. So if you are a mortal, you will have all kinds of trouble, you will have pain as well, and all the troubles are combined with pain too. So the world is full of troubles and grief. For there is not any means by which those that have been born can avoid dying. So he also said that all those who are born in this world cannot do anything to avoid death. So death is sure for all. After reaching old age, there is death. Of such a nature are living beings. So living beings have to understand this fact that one who is born will die one day. As ripe fruits are early in danger of falling, so mortals when born are always in danger of death. So when ripe fruits, that is when the fruits become ripe, we know that one day they will surely fall. So similarly mortals, that means the human beings or people who have birth and death, they are all always in the danger of dying, because death is sure. You cannot, no one can escape death. As all earthen vessels made by the potter ends in being broken, so is the life of mortals. So he is also giving one beautiful example of the earthen pots. All these pots made of clay, what will happen to them? They are not immortal. The clay pots will also be broken one day. They cannot remain as such. So it is similar to the life of the mortals. So all the mortals will have to die one day. Both young and adult, both those who are fools and those who are wise, all fall into the power of death. So he is saying whoever it is, whether they are young or whether they are old or whether they are clever or whether they are fools, everybody will have to die one day. Of those who overcome by death depart from life, a father cannot save his son, nor kinsmen their relationship. Mark. So what is he saying? Even if you are able to overcome by death, okay, depart from this life, nobody can save his son. So even a dead person or a person who has overcome all these sorrows and griefs cannot save somebody. Kinsmen means relations, from dying. While the relatives are looking on and lamenting deeply, one by one mortals are carried off like an ox that is led into a slaughter. So he is saying that everybody, if one person die and all of them are looking at that and feeling sorrow and showing their grief, they all should understand that each and every one will have to die one day and will be taken to the slaughterhouse, like how if you go to a cattle shed and see that one by one these cows or ox may be taken to slaughter to be killed. So like that each mortal or each human being will also die one day. So nobody can escape death. So the world is afflicted with death and decay, therefore the wise do not grieve, knowing the terms of the world. So what is the Buddha telling? The whole world is affected by, afflicted with means affected by death and decay. That means everything will die one day, or everything will become decayed one day. So the wise people, who are the wise people? Who can understand everything and who knows about the truth. So they do not grieve, that means they do not worry about dying, because they know that that is the fact, you cannot escape from it. So these wise people who understand everything, they do not become sad and worry about their death. So they have come to terms with what life is. Not from weeping nor from grieving will anyone obtain peace of mind. So if you keep on crying, you may not get peace of mind. On the contrary, his pain will be greater and his body will suffer. So when you are worried about something, if you keep on crying, what will happen? It will only affect your body and your mind. You are not going to get any kind of relief. He will make himself sick and pale, yet the dead are not saved by his lamentation. So if you keep on crying, you will become sick, you will become pale, and this crying will not help anyone to escape from death. Okay, so there is no use of lamentation, crying over all these things. You have to understand that death is a part of life. He who seeks peace should draw out of the arrow of lamentation and complaint and grief. So if you think you want peace, you must come out of this complaint mode and crying mode and grief mode. That means you should never cry, you should not be complaining, you should not sit worried. So only then you can come out of this you can come out of this kind of a sorrow, and then you will get peace. He who has drawn out of the arrow and he become composed will obtain peace of mind. So if you are composed, that means if you are able to control all your emotions, you will be able to attain peace of mind. He who has overcome all sorrow will become free from sorrow and be blessed. So what is the Buddha saying? Only if you come out of this sorrow, you will be able to attain peace and you will get the blessings of the Lord. Okay, so try to overcome all these things. Understand that death is a part of life, and do not sit and cry or lament, because it will make you more sick. So try to come out of all these, and it is only then you will be able to attain peace of mind. So this is the advice given by Gautama Buddha to Kisa Gautami, because she was grieving over the death of her son, and this is also the gist of the sermon given at Benares. I hope you like this video. For more interesting videos, do subscribe to Hello English Teacher, like, share and give your valuable comments below. Thank you for watching.